It's time for another Dice Tower review with Robert Geistlinger.
We've been poisoned, and we need to find the ingredients that will make an antidote to save our lives before we expire. What better way to do this than to go on a quest? So today, we're going to take a look at Quest for the Antidote. So here we're taking a look at Quest for the Antidote. Now this is a game where players have been poisoned, and we need to go questing to find the ingredients that we can take back to the apothecary, who will then make us an antidote and cure us. But we need to do this within using 50 breaths. Otherwise, we expire. Now this game is a roll and move, but with one slight change in that you can go any direction you want, including reversing on your turn. So if blue went first, he would roll the d6. Well, we only got to go one space, so we would move one space. Not the best example. Let's say now on our next turn we rolled this 6. We could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or we could even go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then reverse for 6 if we didn't want to land here. Well, why wouldn't we want to land there? Well, that's going to be one of the important spaces on the game. As far as the board goes, we're going to have these orange spaces, these green spaces, these yellow spaces, and these blue spaces. Now, I'm not going to cover the blue spaces because they are specific to an item that you can get in the game, and they just give you the option to travel by water. The orange spaces are the ones that we're going to encounter the most, and they're how we're going to have to engage in battles with monsters. You only do this when entering an orange space with the arrow pointing towards the monster deck. When you do this, you do stop your movement immediately, but you don't lose any unspent movement points. So for the sake of argument, I'm going to say that blue here still had 2 movement points, but he is encountering this. So we draw the monster card. Well, we get an escaped convict who is a level 6. There's flavor text on here, but what matters is the level, because combat is simply done by rolling this dice. Now, one thing I didn't mention when we rolled the dice for movement. Anytime you roll a die in this game, you will lose a breath. So when we rolled for a movement, we lost a breath. When we engage in combat, every time we roll, we are going to lose a breath. So we roll once to see if we beat him. We need to get a 6 or better. We got a 3. We lose a breath. We roll again. We get a 6. We still lose a breath, but we have defeated him, and so he will come out of the game. Now, if we had no movement left, we would just move to victory lane and play our next turn from there. But since we still have movement left, this does not count as a space. We could go 1, 2, moving this direction. There is an option to retreat. Let's say that we pulled something in a 9 and we roll and we didn't do it and we don't want to keep going. As long as we have movement points left, we could decide to turn tail and run with those remaining movement points. However, if you do not have any movement points left, it is not an option. You must keep rolling until you defeat that monster, even if you die in the process. Some monsters are also a little more powerful, such as this one here, who's a 9, who will drop some loot. If we defeat him, we get a Satchel of Plunder, which means we could come to this deck and pull that item out. It just happens to be here, and it's something that gives us an ingredient. We haven't really covered ingredients, so let's cover that on these green spaces. If we look over here, we see that the blue player currently needs to get a Feather of Eagle, a Wings of Bat, a Snow of Mountain, and a Grass of Meadow in order to complete his antidote. Well, it happens to be Wings of Bat here. So if we were to make our way to this green spot here, we could collect Wings of Bat. That would allow us to turn the card over to its filled side. The satchel that I mentioned earlier would have allowed us to turn any one of them to its side. The other type of space that is available, as I mentioned, are these yellow spaces. Yellow spaces allow us to collect these loot cards. And loot cards are going to give us various abilities, such as this Fortune Teller, where this card will allow us to look at the top card of any monster deck and decide if we want to deal with it, and then we lose the card. Another thing you can do while moving around this board is duel. So let's say red was here and blue entered the space. could choose to challenge the red player, in which case both players would roll this die. Whoever has the higher is the winner. Now, if the challenger wins, then the challenger gets to take an ingredient of their choice or something from that player. In this case, red has nothing, but let's say that red did have the grass of meadow and we defeat it. We could empty their grass of meadow and claim it for ourselves. However, if the red player had won the challenge, blue would lose 5 breaths as a result of losing. The game will go round and round like this until such time as somebody collects all 4 of their ingredients and makes it back to the apothecary in one piece, at which point they have won the game. However, it is possible for all players to make it all the way around here to the expiration, in which case all players have lost the game. If you expire before anyone else has finished, however, you are eliminated from the game. But your pawn remains in place because other players can enter your space and loot your body for ingredients and unused items. Again, collect 4 ingredients, make it back to the apothecary intact before anyone else, and you have won the game. Run out of breath and you have lost. One other thing to note in the game real quick before we cut over to the review is there are also these meddling cards. Now these are cards that you start with at the beginning of the game that allow you to do things and mess with the game and mess with other players. But in addition to them, you can at any point discard one of them to regain 5 breaths. So let's look at Quest for the Antidote. Now, when I first got this game, I'll admit I had a bias against it. I was already familiar with the mechanisms in the game, and so as such, I knew this was a roll and move game, and I know that naturally I have a bias against games that involve roll and move. However, with that said, I had a lot of fun playing this game. The game is not going to win any awards in modern board gaming design. It's a roll and move. It feels dated. But what it lacks in design, it actually makes up for in just sheer laughs. If you take the game for what it is and you just enjoy the meddling cards and the randomness and the sheer luck and the absurdity of running out of breath, the game is fun. It really does depend on who you play this game with, obviously. If you sit down and try to take this game too seriously, it's not going to be an enjoyable experience. But I found that despite my reservations about this game, by the end, I was laughing and joking and having fun. Now, there are some flaws in the game. For one, there's player elimination, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But that's not the problem. The problem is that you could be eliminated very quickly and actually on one turn. If you were to get to a monster that, say, was a 9, and you couldn't for some reason roll a 9, you could, in theory, roll out the rest of your health, especially if you had no movement points left to retreat. So I'm not a big fan of the way that mechanism works in this game, especially if it happens too early. Now, you could counter with that as you took that risk, but I think that that is just a poor design there. But again, the game is fun. It has interesting things in it, like if you get the meddling card, not the meddling card, the loot card that allows you to shoot the Pegasus out of the sky, and somebody gets the Pegasus card, that's a fun little interaction that I enjoy. I enjoyed being able to challenge other players and take their ingredients from them through nothing more than just rolling 2 dice. So again, the game is mechanism-wise not that great, but there is a fun factor here. I'm not sure that I'd recommend this game necessarily as a buy game because, honestly, I don't see a lot of replayability in the game once you've gotten past a few games and you've seen all the meddling cards work and the loot, especially if you're playing it with the same players. But I definitely recommend this game if someone else has it and you're given an opportunity to play it, because it's not a bad game for the experience. I hope that you've enjoyed this look at Quest for the Antidote and decided whether or not it's something you might want to play, and I look forward to seeing you folks next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.